They told me he died years ago, but when I opened that door underground, he was sitting there, alive, waiting for me. I still remember the heat that day, the kind that hums through your bones until your thoughts start to melt. Nevada has that effect on people. It burns away reason, leaves only instinct. And mine told me I shouldn't have been there. The coordinates came from a man who wouldn't give me his real name. "You'll know it when you see it," he'd said. His voice had that soft, deliberate tone of someone who'd seen too much and decided truth was safer when whispered. I thought it was a joke, another desert myth. You hear plenty when you chase stories for a living. But there was something about his pause before hanging up, like he wanted to say good luck, and I'm sorry at the same time. The site didn't look like much from above, just a cracked stretch of dust, a few half-buried solar panels, and a single vent pushing out warm air that smelled faintly of bleach and metal. No fences, no guards, just silence. But the ground had that hollow feel when you stepped on it, like it was hiding something that didn't want to be found. The hatch was disguised beneath a fake sand dune, a steel plate with a coated keypad. The numbers were worn smooth, but the key sequence worked on the first try. No beep, no lock click. Just a slow hiss as the air pressure equalized and the panel lifted itself open. The ladder went down a long way. My flashlight beam vanished before it hit the bottom. I almost turned back, but curiosity's a cruel thing. Once it grabs you, it doesn't let go until it's chewed through your nerves. When I reached the bottom, the first thing I saw was the light, soft, gold, unnatural. The air smelled filtered, sweetened, too clean. The corridor ahead was smooth and white, curved like the inside of a seashell. I heard faint music, something slow and familiar, like a heartbeat played through vinyl. Then came the voice, gentle, fragile, humming, and for a moment, just a single, impossible moment, I thought I was dreaming, because I knew that sound. Everyone in the world knew that sound. I followed it, every step heavier than the last, until I reached a glass door with a brass plaque that simply read, Studio B. Inside, sitting beneath a spotlight, was a man in a black fedora, his skin pale as porcelain, his hands trembling over a notebook. He looked up at me and smiled that same shy, almost boyish smile the world had buried years ago. "Do you believe in resurrection?" he asked softly. And that's when I realized the rumors weren't rumors. Michael Jackson was alive. I didn't answer him right away. How could I? The world above believed this man was buried under marble and tears. Yet there he sat, breathing, blinking, and watching me as if I were the ghost. The air in the studio felt too still, like the whole bunker was holding its breath. The walls were padded with white acoustic foam, seamless and curved, no corners for sound to hide in. I remember thinking, this room wasn't built to record music. It was built to keep secrets quiet. He stood slowly, the way someone does after years of moving carefully. His voice came out low and cracked, but it still had that unmistakable rhythm, that soft, deliberate way of speaking that turned every word into a note. "Please," he said, "don't be afraid. They told me someone would come." I couldn't find my voice. I'd seen photos, watched footage, read conspiracy threads by people with too much time and not enough proof. But this wasn't that. This was real. Flesh, bone, pulse. "I was told you died," I managed to say. He smiled, tired, sad, but genuine. "Sometimes to stay alive, you have to let the world believe you didn't." He turned, motioning for me to follow. There was a hallway behind the studio, lined with gold discs. No names, no titles, just blank reflections catching the soft light. We walked past rooms filled with instruments, all untouched, and racks of analog tape labeled only with dates. 2009, 2014, 2021, each reel sealed in glass like a relic. I stopped. "You've been recording down here?" He looked back at me, eyes bright in that dim glow. "Music never dies. People do. But music, it hides until the world is ready again." He opened another door, this one smaller, colder. Inside, a soundboard blinked softly. The tape machine whirred, feeding a reel I hadn't noticed before. A voice filled the room, pure and haunting, singing a melody I'd never heard but somehow recognized. The lyrics were simple, but they hit like confession. They said I was gone, but I just went quiet. The stars don't fade, they hide in the riot. My knees almost gave out. I wasn't supposed to hear this. When the song ended, silence swallowed everything. He turned toward me again, that same gentle smile playing at the corners of his lips. "They're coming soon," he said softly. "They always do, when the world gets too loud." I didn't understand then, not fully. But I could see in his eyes that this bunker wasn't a prison. It was a waiting room. For what? I wasn't ready to ask. The next morning, if it was morning down there, began with the sound of footsteps. Not his. Lighter, quicker, efficient. The kind of rhythm that belongs to someone who spent a lifetime pretending they don't exist. When I opened my eyes, there was a woman in a lab coat standing by the glass door, holding a tray with coffee that smelled too perfect to be real. "Breakfast," she said, setting it down. Her tone was practiced warmth, the kind of politeness that hides orders underneath. "Mr. Jackson will be in the East Room when you're ready." Mr. Jackson. Hearing it out loud made the air feel thinner. She left without another word, and I noticed there were no locks on the doors. None needed. The place itself was the lock. Hundreds of feet of desert pressing down, no signal, no exits, no sky. When I found him, he was standing by a wall of old analog monitors. Each screen flickered with grainy images, news broadcasts, award shows, protests, concerts, the outside world, archived and muted. He was watching them like a man reading his own obituary, again and again. "I keep track," he said quietly, "of what they remember and what they forget." "Who are they?" I asked. He hesitated. "The ones who built this place, the ones who said the world wasn't safe anymore. Not for me, not for what I knew." His eyes flicked toward the ceiling, as if the concrete had ears. Maybe it did. He told me about a meeting in late 2008, weeks before the world was told he was gone. Not in a hospital, not surrounded by family. A meeting with men who didn't belong in any record books. Tech magnates, oil heirs, a prince or two. People who could buy silence by the acre. They'd promised protection, anonymity, a way out of the chaos that was closing in on him. All he had to do was disappear. "They said it was temporary," he whispered. "A few months until the noise died down. Then it became a year, then 10. He turned back to the screens. One of them showed a headline from just days ago, something about another billionaire retreat breaking ground under the Rockies. He pointed to it. "They're still building," he said. "They never stopped." I felt a chill then, deep and electric. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about him. This bunker wasn't a refuge. It was a prototype. A model for something bigger, something global. "Michael," I said slowly, "who's paying for all of this now?" He looked at me for a long moment, like he was weighing how much truth I could handle. Then he smiled, soft, knowing, almost kind. "You don't pay for a place like this," he said. "You owe for it, and some debts never get collected until the world starts to fall apart." He turned back to the monitors, and one of them flickered. A new feed, live, showing a convoy of black SUVs crawling across the desert above us. He didn't flinch. He just said, "They found us." And for the first time since I'd come down that ladder, I heard fear in his voice. The hum started before the alarms, a vibration through the concrete, soft at first, like thunder too far away to care about. Then it grew, a low metallic growl that rattled the light fixtures and made the air inside the bunker feel like it was breathing with us. Michael didn't move. He just stared at the screens, one hand resting on the console, the other clenching a worn rosary I hadn't noticed before. The beads clicked softly in the silence between each distant rumble. "They're early," he said. I asked who they were again, but he didn't answer. Didn't have to. The monitors told me enough. 6 SUVs, 1 armored truck. Dust kicking up behind them like a curtain to hide the desert's horizon. The woman in the lab coat came back, her calm cracked now, her voice stripped of its professional softness. "You need to go," she said, motioning for me to follow. "Now." Michael shook his head. "No, it's too late for that." The lights dimmed, then switched to red. Somewhere in the distance, mechanical locks began to slide into place. The sound wasn't comforting. It was final. "They built fail-safes," the woman said. "In case of a breach, everything goes into containment mode." "Containment for what?" I asked. Michael looked at me then, really looked, like he wanted me to understand without him saying it. "For me," he said quietly. We moved fast, through a series of narrow corridors that curved like veins through the earth. I tried to keep track, but the halls kept turning back on themselves, mirrored and soundproofed. It was disorienting, intentional. A maze for intruders, or for prisoners. Somewhere behind us, a heavy door slammed shut. Then another. "She's trying to seal them out," Michael said. "She?" I asked. "The system," the woman snapped. "He calls it she. It's an AI, controls ventilation, lighting, security, everything. It's been trained to protect him at all costs." We reached a steel door marked Vault 7. It hissed open to reveal a room unlike the rest. No marble, no light panels, just raw concrete and a massive table covered in papers, cassettes, and photographs. On the wall, a digital map pulsed red over the outline of Nevada. Dozens of small dots blinked beneath it. "What are those?" I asked. "Other sites," the woman said. "This isn't the only one. There are dozens, some abandoned, some still active." Michael placed his hand on the table, tracing one of the dots near Los Alamos. "They said it was to preserve culture, to protect humanity's greatest creations if the world fell apart." He gave a sad, almost bitter smile. "Turns out they meant themselves." The monitors flickered again. The SUVs had stopped. Men in tactical gear were setting up equipment, scanners, drills, something with a long pointed antenna aimed straight at the sand. "They're going to breach the outer hatch," the woman said. "Less than 10 minutes. Michael took a deep breath and looked at me. "There's a way out," he said. "But it's not up there." I frowned. "Then where?" He pressed a hidden panel on the wall. The concrete split open, revealing a narrow tunnel leading down, not up. The air that rose from it was cold and old, like it hadn't been touched in years. "I buried my freedom down there," he said softly. "But if you want the truth, you'll have to see it for yourself." Behind us, the sound of drills pierced the air. And somewhere above, sunlight finally met steel. The tunnel yawned open before us, a narrow throat carved through concrete and stone. The air was damp, colder than it had any right to be this deep in the desert. I hesitated at the edge, flashlight trembling in my hand. Michael went first. He didn't need light. He walked like someone following muscle memory, his shadow flickering against the walls. The woman followed, muttering something about pressure valves and emergency seals. I brought up the rear, half convinced the door behind us would close and never open again. The deeper we went, the stranger it became. The walls shifted from poured concrete to some kind of composite, smooth, dark, almost metallic. It wasn't a maintenance tunnel. It was a design, deliberate and expensive. Every 20 feet or so, a faint chime echoed, not mechanical, but melodic, like someone tapping crystal. "What is this place?" I asked. Michael didn't turn. "The first place I was free," he said, "and the last." After 100 yards, the tunnel widened into a chamber. My flashlight caught on glass, rows of transparent cases stretching into the dark. Inside each one was a piece of something I couldn't quite name. Costumes, notebooks, tape reels, handwritten lyrics, even toys. It was like walking through a mausoleum built for memory. "This is where I kept what they couldn't buy," he whispered. "The pieces of me that weren't for sale." He stopped beside one of the cases. Inside was a single black fedora and a sheet of yellowed paper, edges curling. I leaned in. The writing was shaky but unmistakable. "The world only loves what it can consume. Hide the rest." I turned to him. "You hid your work down here?" "Not just mine," he said. He pointed deeper into the chamber. "Others, too. They brought me things, unfinished songs, unreleased art, messages, people who wanted their truth to live somewhere the world couldn't erase it." He walked on, fingertips brushing the glass. "You think I'm the only one they buried?" Before I could answer, a sound rippled through the floor, a distant boom, followed by a second, closer one. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. The woman froze, hand on her radio. "They've breached the upper level," she said. "The outer hatch is gone." Michael closed his eyes, calm in a way that didn't make sense. "Then it begins again." "What begins?" I demanded. He looked back at me, and in the half-light, his face was both older and younger, like the years he'd hidden hadn't passed the same way down here. "You'll see soon," he said softly. "They think they're coming to take me, but what's down here isn't theirs to own." Another explosion shook the tunnel. A siren wailed in the distance, a slow, mournful sound like something alive was crying. The woman turned to me, panic breaking through her professionalism for the first time. "If he's telling the truth," she said, "then we're standing on top of something that could rewrite everything." Michael started down another corridor, his voice echoing faintly. "They won't stop at me. They never do." And as the lights above us flickered out one by one, I realized this wasn't just a hiding place. It was a vault, and something inside it was waking up. We half ran, half stumbled after him, the sound of the siren thinning into a long mechanical moan. The deeper we went, the more the air changed, charged, humming. The tunnel walls started to sweat. Beads of condensation rolled down metal that shouldn't have been cold in a desert. The woman, her badge finally visible in the flashlight beam, Dr. Lin, kept checking her wrist monitor. "Pressure's wrong," she murmured. "Either the seal's failing, or something's generating its own field." Michael didn't slow. He reached another sealed door, smaller than the others, framed in copper instead of steel. There was no keypad, just a circular indentation about the size of a human hand. He pressed his palm against it. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the metal rippled, almost liquid, and the door withdrew into the wall. Beyond it, a vast chamber opened up, far larger than the bunker above. The ceiling disappeared into blackness. The floor was a smooth, obsidian mirror, broken only by a series of glowing circles that pulsed like heartbeats. In the center of the room sat a single glass cylinder. Inside it floated a sphere of light, no bigger than a basketball, spinning slowly, threads of blue and gold snaking through it. The thing made no sound, but every hair on my arm stood up. Dr. Lin's voice went thin. "It's still active." I whispered, "What is it?" Michael walked toward the glass, stopping close enough that the light brushed his face. They called it the archive, he said. But it's more than storage. It's everything I couldn't finish. Songs, stories, patterns, memories. They built it to preserve creativity itself, to make sure no voice ever really died. He looked back at me, eyes bright. When they realized what it could do, they stopped calling it art. They called it property. The sphere pulsed brighter, and a faint sound bled into the air. First a single note, then chords, then fragments of a melody I recognized from somewhere deep in childhood. For a second I thought the music was coming from the speakers. Then I realized it was coming from inside my head. Dr. Lin staggered. It's broadcasting directly. Neural resonance. We were never supposed to turn it on again. Michael smiled, almost tender. It never turned off. The ground trembled, another blast from above. A fine crack splintered the glass cylinder. The light inside flared, spinning faster. I felt it in my skull, in my teeth. Michael, I said, we need to shut it down. He shook his head slowly. No, if they're here, it means they want to bury it again. I won't let them. Dr. Lin grabbed my arm. If that containment breaks, it won't just sing. It'll rewrite everything near it. Sound, memory, data, people. The glass cracked again, louder this time. Michael whispered, maybe that's what the world needs. The door behind us slammed open, boots on metal, flashlights cutting through the dark. Voices shouted orders. And in that split second before everything erupted into chaos, the sphere flared white, a soundless explosion of light that filled the chamber like a breath. Then everything went quiet. When I came to, the world was wrong in the smallest ways. The light was no longer white. It had folded itself into a soft, living gold that pulsed with each heartbeat. I was lying on the floor of the chamber, my flashlight shattered beside me, the air thick with the scent of ozone and dust. At first I thought I'd gone deaf. Then I realized everything was simply muted. Even my breathing sounded distant, like it was happening in another room. Dr. Lin was a few feet away, sitting upright, her eyes open but unfocused. Her lips moved soundlessly. I followed her gaze. The glass cylinder that had held the archive was gone. No shards, no smoke, nothing. Only a faint ring of frost burned into the floor. And Michael was standing in the middle of it. He looked younger, not by years, but by something deeper. His posture was straighter, his hands steady. The trembling I'd seen in him since the moment we met was gone. When he turned toward us, the glow from the ring caught in his eyes, turning them a strange, shifting blue. Did it explode? I asked, though the words felt wrong as they left my mouth. No, he said softly. It listened. The soldiers who had breached the upper level were there now, too, but they weren't moving. They stood at the edge of the chamber, rifles hanging at their sides, eyes vacant. It was like the moment the light hit, time had forgotten to start again for them. Dr. Lin crawled toward her equipment, frantic. You don't understand, she said. If the archive integrated, it's not just data, it's thought, emotion, memory. Michael knelt beside one of the frozen soldiers, touched his shoulder and whispered, They're dreaming. It showed them something beautiful. They'll stay in that dream until the noise fades. Then he looked at me. It didn't choose them. I stepped back. Choose who? You, he said. Us. Anyone who still hears. It's inside us now. Dr. Lin stopped typing. You mean it imprinted? He nodded. Every melody, every unfinished story, every sound ever lost. It's alive. Through us. The floor quivered again. This time, not from explosions, but from the resonance itself, like a giant tuning fork humming through the bones of the desert. The golden light crawled up the tunnel walls, spreading toward the levels above. Michael, I said, we have to get out. Whatever it's doing, we can't stop it down here. He didn't move. He just listened, really listened, to something I couldn't hear. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, he said, "It's not destroying, it's remembering." He turned toward the tunnel leading upward, the gold light now washing over the ceilings, chasing away the red emergency glow. "Come," he said. "There's someone we need to show this to before they bury it again." Dr. Lin and I followed because there was nothing else to do. As we reached the first bend, the soldier nearest the doorway blinked for the first time since the flash and whispered a single word, one that made my skin crawl and my heart race at once. Encore. The climb back up was a blur of gold and shadow. Every corridor we passed through looked slightly altered. The marble walls shimmered faintly, and the hum of the ventilation system had tuned itself into something close to harmony. It wasn't noise anymore. It was music. Not a melody I recognized, not anything human. It was as if the bunker itself had learned to breathe in rhythm. By the time we reached the upper level, the power systems had reset. The screens that once showed static now displayed slow waves of light, like a pulse synced to something beyond the walls. The outside cameras still worked. Through them we could see the desert, only it wasn't empty anymore. The air above the sand glowed faintly, like dawn caught too early. The convoy was still there, but the men weren't moving. They stood in perfect stillness beside their vehicles, faces tilted upward. Some were crying. One had his hands raised like a preacher at a revival. Dr. Lin kept whispering, "This can't be real. This can't be real," as she checked readings that no longer made sense. Michael didn't look surprised. He moved through the control room with the calm of someone returning home. "They're hearing it," he said. "All of them. The world's been deaf too long. It's just waking up." He stepped closer to one of the monitors, watching the soldiers sway gently, as though they were keeping time with something only they could hear. I tried to reason with him. "You don't know what this is doing, Michael. It could hurt people." He smiled faintly. "It's not pain you're seeing. It's truth. The archive doesn't force you to listen. It just stops you from lying to yourself." Dr. Lin looked up from her console, her eyes wide with something between fear and awe. "Do you understand what this means? The resonance field is spreading through EM bands. It's in every signal, every broadcast tower, every satellite. If it's reaching this far, it's already out there." Michael nodded. "Good. It belongs to the world again." I stepped forward, grabbed his arm. "You'll collapse everything. Systems, communications, maybe even people's minds." He looked at me with something close to pity. "Maybe that's the only way to make them hear." The lights flickered. Every screen in the bunker filled with faces, not just soldiers, not just nearby cameras, but strangers, civilians, people from every corner of the world. Some crying, some smiling, some frozen mid-breath as a golden shimmer crossed their eyes. Voices began to overlap, a murmur at first, then rising, not panic, not confusion. Singing. Hundreds of thousands of people somehow, connected through the same invisible thread. Michael stepped into the center of the room, lifted his hand as though conducting an unseen orchestra, and whispered, "This is what they tried to stop. This is why they buried me." Dr. Lin's monitor beeped frantically. The field's expanding faster now, exponential. It's rewriting patterns in sound itself. The floor trembled again. Dust fell from the ceiling. The walls vibrated with impossible harmony. "Michael," I shouted, "what happens when it's done?" He turned to me, his face half lit by the gold storm blooming across the screens. "When it's done," he said softly, "the world won't need to hear me anymore. It'll remember me." Then the power cut out completely, and the desert began to sing louder than the wind. When the emergency lights failed, there was only the gold. It seeped through cracks in the concrete like water, slow at first, then flooding in until everything shimmered. I thought it was fire, that we'd die in some silent, beautiful inferno. But it wasn't heat I felt, it was memory. The air itself carried sound now. A hum pressed against my ribs, notes I didn't understand but somehow recognized, as if I'd heard them once in a dream. I reached for the wall to steady myself. It pulsed faintly beneath my hand, alive, like the bunker was breathing. "Surface," Dr. Lin gasped. "We have to reach the surface before the pressure equalizes." Michael was already moving. His figure glowed faintly, the edges of him soft, almost transparent in the gold haze. "It's not pressure," he said. "It's release." The stairwell that led up felt endless. As we climbed, we passed screens still flickering on emergency power. Each showed the same thing: cities bathed in light. Los Angeles, London, Tokyo. People standing in the streets, faces tilted to the sky. Some were singing, others just listened, tears cutting lines through dust. When we reached the final hatch, the steel was warm under my hands. I twisted the wheel, expecting resistance, but it opened easily, like it had been waiting. The desert was unrecognizable. The night sky blazed with a light that wasn't the sun, wasn't the moon. It was that same deep gold, rolling in waves across the horizon. The sand glittered, every grain a tiny mirror. The convoy of vehicles sat abandoned, engines off, doors open. The soldiers were gone. No wind, no sound, until Michael stepped outside. The instant his foot touched the sand, the ground rippled, and the hum grew louder. From somewhere distant came a faint chorus, millions of voices, overlapping, wordless, unified. Dr. Lin raised her monitor. The screen was blank, but symbols kept flashing, patterns, not letters. She frowned, her voice trembling. "It's rewriting language itself. Every transmission I pick up, text, code, even binary, it's all being translated into the same pattern." "What pattern?" I asked. She looked at Michael. "Music." He smiled, gentle and weary. "It's not destroying your world, it's tuning it." We stood there, three small figures in a sea of light, while the desert sang. The melody wasn't sad or triumphant. It was something older, a sound that felt like forgiveness. Dr. Lin whispered, "If this spreads, nothing will ever be the same. No secrets, no lies. Everyone will remember everything." Michael's eyes shimmered. That's all I ever wanted. I wanted to ask him what would happen to him, but before I could, the wind finally returned. A soft, rising current, carrying with it whispers, laughter, and the faint echo of applause. The kind you hear at the end of a concert when the lights are fading and no one wants to leave. Then he turned to us, his outline blurring in the golden light. "It's time," he said. "Every song ends, every voice goes home." And before either of us could stop him, he stepped farther into the desert, where the light was thickest. His shape dissolved, first his shadow, then his face, until there was only brightness. The last thing I heard was his voice, distant but clear. "Tell them I didn't hide, I just kept singing." When the light faded, dawn had already come. Real dawn, blue, quiet, the kind of morning that smells of dust and new beginnings. The desert looked ordinary again, almost. No gold shimmer, no choir in the wind, just silence. But silence that remembered the song. Dr. Lin and I wandered through what was left of the compound. The power was gone, the walls still warm, the air clean in a way it had never been before. Every device that could play sound, phones, radios, recorders, was dead. Their screens glowed faintly with the same single symbol, a circle divided by a heartbeat line. She ran diagnostics from a portable tablet, muttering about corrupted frequencies and non-linear memory loops. Whatever had happened wasn't just in our heads. The electromagnetic spectrum itself had changed. I didn't care about the science. I just kept listening. And I swear, underneath the quiet, there was still a hum, soft, steady, like a human note stretched thin across the horizon. By noon, emergency helicopters buzzed overhead. They circled once, twice, then left without landing. No one wanted to come close. Maybe they couldn't hear us over whatever the world was becoming. We walked for hours until we found a road. My car was still where I'd left it, coated in dust. The radio turned on by itself when I started the engine. No station, just a single voice, low and familiar, whispering, "If you're hearing this, you remember." Then static. That night, back in the city, the signs of change were everywhere. Street musicians were playing the same unfinished melody, though none of them knew where they'd learned it. People stopped mid-conversation to hum the same 3 notes. Children whispered them in their sleep. Governments called it a global resonance anomaly. Scientists argued about sonic viruses, shared hallucinations, quantum feedback. But anyone who'd heard it knew better. It wasn't an infection. It was inheritance. A month later, I started seeing the gold light again, reflected in puddles, in glass, in people's eyes when they smiled. It wasn't bright anymore, just enough to remind you that something underneath the world was still awake, still singing. Doctor, Lynn left a message before she disappeared. It's spreading through memory, not air. Every time someone recalls a song, a story, a heartbeat, it grows. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I drive back out to the desert. The bunker entrance is sealed now, buried under a new government facility, no record of what was there before. But the sand still glows faintly at night. And if you stand there long enough, if you let the wind pass through you, you can hear him again. Not words, not melody, just the feeling of being known. The world thinks Michael Jackson died. Maybe he did. Maybe he just became what he was always chasing, something that never stops singing, even after the music ends. So I tell his story, quietly, like a promise, because somewhere beneath our feet, the earth still hums in perfect pitch. And when it does, for just a moment, we all remember the same song,